Have you ever really stopped to think about what happens in the first 2 years of a person's life? I mean, it is the most incredible transformation imaginable. We go from a completely helpless newborn to a little person who can walk, talk, and has their own personality. So how on earth does that happen? Well, that's what we're going to get into today.
To kick things off, let's just start with one number that kind of blows your mind. By the time they have their first birthday cake, most babies have tripled their birth weight. Tripled. That is a rate of growth they will literally never see again for the rest of their lives.
And to really wrap your head around that, think about it this way. If a 150-pound adult grew at that same pace, they'd weigh 450 pounds in just a year. It's just wild.
And this massive physical expansion, it's the foundation for everything, absolutely everything that's about to happen next.
So to make sense of this incredible journey, we've broken it down into 5 parts. We'll start with the body in the Great Expansion. Then we'll look at how the brain gets wired up. After that, how they crack the language code, the first flicker of their social world, and finally, what ties it all together, the power of connection.
Okay, first stop, the Great Expansion. This is all about building the hardware, you know? The actual physical body that makes everything else possible.
Now this growth, it's not chaotic. It actually follows 2 really predictable rules. The first is called cephalocaudal, which is just a fancy way of saying head to tail. This is why babies look so top-heavy. Their brain and head get a major head start. The second rule is proximodistal, or near to far. This means an infant gets control of their torso and their arms way before they can do anything precise with their tiny fingers.
And you can see these patterns play out perfectly with their big muscle skills, what we call gross motor skills. Just look at the progression. First, they get enough neck strength to lift their head. Then, the core strength to sit up. And finally, they coordinate the whole shebang to crawl and then pull themselves up to stand. It's an amazing sequence. And at the very same time, their fine motor skills are coming online. This is that near to far pattern in action. You know, they start with these clumsy whole hand grabs, and then bit by bit, it refines into that incredibly precise pincer grasp they use to pick up a single piece of cereal. They're going from pure instinct to deliberate planned action.
Okay, so the body is growing like crazy, but what about the computer that's running the whole show? How does an infant's brain go from, well, basically zero to making sense of this big, confusing world?
Well, this is where the legendary psychologist Jean Piaget comes in, and he had this brilliant idea, captured in this quote. He said infants aren't just little sponges soaking things up. No, they're active scientists. They're constantly running experiments to figure out how the world works. They literally have to invent their own understanding.
And Piaget said they do this in 2 main ways. The first is called assimilation. That's when they try to fit something new into a mental box they already have. So a toddler has a box for doggy, it has 4 legs, and is furry. When they see a cat, they try to stuff it in that same box. Doggy! But then comes accommodation. They realize, wait a minute, this one meows, it's different, so they have to adjust their thinking and create a whole new mental box just for cat. And that constant back and forth, that's learning.
This process leads to some huge breakthroughs, and one of the first big ones is object permanence. It's a game changer. Before this, if you hide a toy from a baby, it's literally out of sight, out of mind. The toy has ceased to exist. But once they get object permanence, they know the toy is still there, just hidden, and they'll go looking for it. It's a massive step in understanding that the world is a stable, predictable place.
All right, so their brain is starting to figure out the physical world. But now for what might be the hardest thing any of us ever learn, cracking the language code. How do you go from just crying to actually saying words?
Well, the path is surprisingly consistent for babies all over the world. It starts with crying, their first form of communication. Then comes those sweet cooing sounds. Around 6 months, you get the classic babbling, like ma ma ma, where they're just practicing the sounds of their language. Pointing and other gestures come next, and then the magic moment, their first real words. After that, things take off. There's often a vocabulary explosion, and they start stringing 2 words together in what's called telegraphic speech, like more milk.
So how is this all happening? Well, one of the first big theories was purely about nurture. B.F. Skinner argued that language is just a learned behavior. Kids get rewarded for saying things right. You know, the baby says ball, and mom gets all excited and says, yes, ball! The problem is, this theory just can't explain how quickly kids learn, or how they can say sentences they've never, ever heard an adult say before.
So on the complete opposite side, you have the nature argument. The linguist Noam Chomsky proposed that we're all born with something he called a language acquisition device, a LAD. Think of it like a special program in our brain that's just waiting for language input. This explains why all kids hit the same milestones at roughly the same time. The only hiccup? Scientists have never actually found a specific part of the brain that we can point to and say, yep, that's the LAD.
Which brings us to where most experts land today, the interactionist view. It basically says it's not nature or nurture, it's nature and nurture working together. Our brains come biologically pre-wired and ready for language, for sure. But that ability needs to be activated by rich social interaction. Caregivers provide what's called a language acquisition support system. By talking to the baby, responding to their babbles, they're creating the perfect environment for that built-in language ability to just blossom.
So the body's growing, the brain's wiring up, and language is starting to happen. But what's going on inside? Let's talk about the social spark, the very first emergence of human emotion.
Well, emotions develop in waves. In the first 6 months or so, you see the primary emotions. These are the basics, like joy, anger, sadness, fear, the ones that are hardwired into us and even other animals. But later on, as their brain gets more complex and they develop a sense of me, a whole new set of feelings show up, the self-conscious emotions. These are things like empathy, pride, jealousy, and guilt. You can't feel these until you understand yourself as an individual separate from others.
Now let's talk about fear for a second, because two of the most common fears in infancy are actually incredibly positive signs. First, there's stranger anxiety, that classic phase where a baby gets wary of unfamiliar faces. This is great. It means they can tell the difference between people they know and trust and people they don't. And then there's separation protest, crying when a parent leaves the room. That shows that a deep, powerful bond is formed. It's a sign of secure attachment.
Of course, every baby is different, right? They all come with their own unique little personality or temperament. Researchers have kind of boiled it down to 3 general styles. You've got the easy child who's pretty cheerful and adapts well. Then there's the difficult child who tends to react more negatively and has a harder time with change. And finally, the slow to warm up child who's a bit more cautious and low-key. The most important thing here is that none of these is good or bad. What truly matters is how a caregiver tunes in and responds to their child's specific style.
And that idea brings us to our final and most important section, where everything we've talked about, the physical, the cognitive, the emotional, it all comes together. We're talking about the power of connection and building those first crucial relationships.
The brilliant psychoanalyst Erik Erikson said that the entire first year of life boils down to one fundamental challenge: learning trust versus mistrust. It's simple, really. When a baby's needs are met consistently and lovingly, they learn that the world is a safe, reliable place. They develop a deep sense of trust. But if that care is inconsistent or neglectful, they learn that the world is unpredictable and scary. And that choice point can shape their relationships for the rest of their lives.
So, how do caregivers build that trust and support all this new learning? Well, one of the best concepts for this is called scaffolding. It's a perfect metaphor. Imagine you're helping a child learn to walk. At first, you hold both of their hands, giving them tons of support. Then, as they get a little steadier, maybe you just hold one hand. Eventually, you let go for a few steps, but you stay right there ready to catch them. You're providing just enough support for them to succeed, and you slowly take it away as their own skills grow. That's scaffolding, and it applies to everything.
So from tripling their weight to wiring a brain from scratch, learning to talk, and learning to love, the first 2 years are just a breathtaking marathon of change. And if there's one single thread that runs through it all, it's this: the whole incredible process is built on a foundation of human connection. Which leaves us with a pretty profound question to think about. If an infant's entire world is built on these first connections, how deeply does our role as caregivers shape the very architecture of the adults they will one day become?